So then when it comes to getting that market knowledge, I mean, you grew up in the area, so you really know the area, I'm assuming. And but what are some other things that you would give recommendations for agents to really get to know the market, right? I mean, obviously you're driving around, you're checking out the schools, but, like getting involved with the city, other angles, like what would you recommend there?
So what I did is I basically, 2003, I started an Excel spreadsheet, and Lake Winnipesaukee is what everybody thinks about when they're thinking about real estate. So I really made this spreadsheet that broke it down by average price and sold volume. That's some of the normal stuff, but I also broke it down even further and used my market knowledge to say, all right, the land is worth this based on, there are some people that tore down houses at $1 million, so this land's worth $1 million. And then I put the next column what the sales price was. And then I subtracted the two. So now I had a number that people were paying for used houses, so you could have a square foot. Because up here, and it's funny because people will come up from Massachusetts and say, well, if you do that math, it's 500 a square foot. But they're doing both the land and the house in that calculation, which just doesn't make sense. There's two different aspects to every property. One is the waterfront, which could be worth, I sold a $3.6 million sale, tear down. So you have to think about the land. And no one else was doing that. And I've kept that spreadsheet over the years. I was just working on it the other day. So it just shows that I've really thought about and really thought through what true value is on the lake. And I had one of my biggest deal ever. It was both sides of a $6.3 million house. It was the week before closing, and the lawyer said to the buyer, and I had both sides. So the lawyer said to the buyer, this house is only appraised at $3 million. And this sent this buyer into a tailspin. Like, am I paying too much for this house? All this kind of stuff. And if I didn't have that spreadsheet, and if I sat down with him for 2 hours and just went through every single number and said, all right. And at the end of that conversation, he said, wow, all right, I'm getting a pretty good deal, aren't I? I'm like, yes, you are. But if I hadn't had that knowledge and the really customized knowledge, it would have been a train wreck. I think a week before closing, it would have been a bad day.
Yeah. I mean, because essentially there you're getting paid on what, 12.6 million of real estate because you got both sides. Yeah, no, that's a commission check you don't want to miss. Yeah, I mean, it's one thing that like I don't see a lot of agents doing this. Stuff like just like basics, like going to classes that local appraisers are doing and really getting to like what does that feature in this home truly calculate to when it comes to us doing our market evaluation reports. And there's one of the reason that like Phoenix got crushed when the market crashed. And I got very heavy into REO. And, one of the things I loved about REO is with the BPOs we had to do, I mean, they were little mini appraisals. I mean, it forced you to get really good at valuations compared to just doing your regular comps and having a conversation with the seller. So, is that something? I mean, you're obviously tracking the land, but then is that something that you spend a lot of time with as well? Like going out there and identifying what does an appraiser give, this feature or whatever. So then because you're valuing the land, but then how you got to value the cost of the actual house, right?
Right. Yeah. And there are certain features that are it's funny because it's almost less about the house up here. It's more about the land because you can have a boathouse on a property that, some guy built a boathouse for $800,000 and it's just to park the boats in. And so you could have a boathouse that is on a piece of property that's not a great piece of property. So the boathouse is an X factor that can vary greatly. The fact that a piece of property has a sugar sand beach is a factor because there's very strict regulations now, but anything that was put in before 1978 or permitted in less strict permits, that's more valuable. So knowing the cost of construction plus what people are paying for those type of features is huge. And you comment on an appraiser. There was a house that we sold last year for 3.8. And I'm not a huge fan of the appraisal process right now because I don't, with the banks not being able to get their appraisers that know the area in there, I had an appraiser that was asking me about the docks and the beaches and all this, just didn't know. And I'm like, I was scared because, you know, it was a big sale and these guys didn't know what they're talking about. They did know the features that you're talking about, like the chimney or the fireplaces and the extra garage and stuff like that, but they didn't know the true value of the property, because this had a huge 40 by 40 boathouse, a 15-foot wide dock by 60 feet, like things you could never do today. And it has a value to the buyer, but does that translate into the appraisal? So actually back in 2009 and 10, when things were going crazy up here, and that was my job, is to get the appraisal to where it was supposed to be. So understanding the value, there could be a house that was sold down the street for $1.2 million, and the appraiser would use their square footage, and I'd say, well, actually, they're going to tear that house down. So that's not really a good comp for this property. So understanding that, and then conveying to sellers in the listing appointment, telling those stories, saying, you know, giving them confidence that I've dissected the marketplace and it's a niche marketplace for me with the lake. It gives them the confidence. All right, you can defend my house. You can defend what I've built here. You can defend the special piece of property that I have.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, the clientele that you're dealing with are obviously very, very successful people. Most successful people, right, are bottom line driven, you know, right? I mean, and you've got to be able to have those conversations with them. And man, I love it.